Hey guys, what's up? So did you know that Minotaur used to be a prince? Not like in Beauty and the Beast though, where the Beast was some handsome prince guy. Minotaur was an actual prince of the Minotaur race. So shout out to his parents for giving him such a great name. Next time I have another kid, I'll name it Human. So anyways, Minotaur was supposed to be the next king for their Minoan kingdom. By the way, this happened hundreds of years ago from the current timeline of the ML universe. Back then, the Minoan Empire was situated within the Agalta drylands, which was an essential area for the trade routes of all the western cities. This provided the Minoan Empire numerous trade networks, and with that, the empire was able to flourish and prosper. The Minoan Empire was also known for their advanced civilization and martial expertise. And within those numerous martial experts, one stood amongst them all, the Prince Minotaur. Minotaur was a fierce warrior, and his fighting techniques was often fueled by his rage. Only a few top-tier warriors could last a few rounds against him. Being an empire that revolves on martial prowess, Minotaur was worshipped and idolized by its citizens. However, Minotaur's father, which was the current king, was starting to have concerns about the crown prince. Despite achieving numerous victories within the battlefield, Minotaur's savagery was becoming more and more out of control. It was a fate that was unfitting for a future king. The old king decided that he would have to start molding his son to become a suitable and respectable ruler. His first step was to arrange a special trial. Minotaur was to battle a mysterious figure that was said to come from foreign lands. And winning this duel would mean that he would qualify for the Minoan throne. Minotaur heard of it and gladly accepted the match. He was, after all, the most powerful warrior within their empire. However, when the battle began, the masked foreigner proved to be a tough opponent. The foreigner would counter Minotaur's attacks with his precise movements and sharp techniques. Despite Minotaur's strength, he was completely outclassed by his opponent. The foreigner was levels above Minotaur in terms of skills. Soon enough, Minotaur exhausted himself and lost to the mysterious figure. The crowd roared as the invincible Minotaur fell down and was defeated. They cheered for the strong and graceful masked foreigner. Minotaur, who had always prided himself as the strongest, was full of shame and was seething with rage. So, when the mysterious figure stretched out his hand towards Minotaur to help him back on his feet, Minotaur grabbed the hand of the unsuspecting foreigner and pinned him down onto the ground. And with a rage far greater than anything Minotaur have ever felt, he pummeled down his fists onto his opponent below him. The crowd was going wild and booing Minotaur. But despite that, vicious blows kept raining down onto the foreigner's head. And when the figure finally stopped moving, Minotaur stood up and tore off the mask of the mysterious figure. And that's when all the blood left Minotaur's face. It was his father. The masked foreigner was his father. The old king, with his last strength, grasped Minotaur's hand and said his final words.
You must learn to shoulder the responsibility of a king and continue the glory of Minoa.
Yep, Minotaur killed his own dad, the a-hole. Minotaur needs some anger management sessions, man. Anyway, this jerk of a cow was so consumed by shame, regret, and guilt that he secluded himself and went deep within the Minoan labyrinth, which was also the burial grounds of the Minoan ancestors. He lived his life in repentance and physical training. Over time, Minotaur gradually gained control over his rage and savagery. Now I know what you guys are thinking. His ultimate, right? Controlled rage. His passive lets him build up some rage and then unleash it at the right moment. So you guys should remember his dead father whenever you use his ultimate. Anyways, during Minotaur's self-seclusion, a huge-ass catastrophe had struck. And based on what I've read on everyone's background story, this event seems to be the biggest and most destructive one ever. A huge explosion happened that wiped out the entire Minoan civilization and maybe even more. This explosion came from the Twilight Orb. Yep, we're looking at you, Lunox. So basically, everything went bye-bye within the Empire, except Minotaur, who was deep within the labyrinth. Feeling the impact of this explosion, Minotaur rushed towards the labyrinth's entrance. However, one of the shards from the broken Twilight Orb plummeted towards the labyrinth, and for some reason, the shard sealed the whole Minoan labyrinth. Minotaur, who was almost at the entrance, was sealed together with the labyrinth and was put into a deep sleep. Time itself was sealed within that place. The catastrophe that happened erased all the traces of the once proud Minoan Empire. The labyrinth and its ruins were half buried within the sands as hundreds of years passed by. Now here's the weird part. After countless days and nights had passed, the broken pieces of the Twilight Orb turned into Lunox, and then she just left. After Lunox left, the seal within the labyrinth was lifted. Time in the labyrinth began to flow again, and our bull friend Minotaur slowly opened his eyes. Now remember, Minotaur still has no idea what happened. Last time he was conscious, he was just running towards the labyrinth's entrance to check what had happened. He has no idea that his whole kingdom, or even his whole race, had been erased from existence. Thankfully though, Aldous, who for some reason was a guardian of the labyrinth, informed Minotaur that the Minoan Empire had been long gone. Long gone. And that Minotaur and the labyrinth was all that's left of the Minoan Empire. Minotaur didn't believe a single thing Aldous said though. For Minotaur, a few seconds have just passed after the explosion, and definitely not hundreds of years. Now, based on Aldous' story, Aldous was actually awake during all those years, and he was just guarding the labyrinth, and at some point, even defended it against Selena and her abyssal forces. Apparently, the abyssal guys wanted to take the mystical force that was sealing the labyrinth, which as it turned out was Lunox. Doesn't that make Aldous hundreds of years old? Even Selena? Well, the timeline on some of the hero stories are a bit hazy, so bear with me. For Minotaur though, his father's final words was still fresh in his mind. However, there was one thing that he could not deny. The Minoan Empire was gone. Everything around him was just sand. The Minotaur prince set foot through the desert, vowing to himself that he would find his lost kin and rebuild the Minoan civilization.